I've spent about 15 or so hours now on Horizon Forbidden West, and I've got to say my opinion of the game has soured greatly since I initially started to play. And it's very easy to be blown away by the magnitude of this game and the stunning frame rates and stunning resolutions that are offered. This is really a flagship graphical game in terms of just presentation and sound design, no doubt. And I think for that reason alone, a lot of people just naturally are drawn to it. But I'm finding that as I play through the experience more and more often, I am frustrated by my play sessions. The game is a lot harder than the original, and I don't mind a good challenge. I did beat Elden Ring, I did beat all the Dark Souls games. Games that are a challenge, I'm okay with. It's that they have to be somewhat fair. And I feel like Horizon definitely suffers in that regard. And maybe you could say, oh, you're not high enough level, you need to go grind more or whatever. I find the game presents challenges to you in a way that it is almost impossible to beat unless you play the game exactly how they want you to play it. And that's my real frustration with this experience, because more often than not, I'm exploring and I'm trying to uncover the world around me, and Aloy herself is constantly telling me, I can't do this yet, I'll have to come back later, I don't have the right gear to proceed. If you're going to tout an open world game, I understand there may be some things that are locked behind progression walls, but this game has taken that concept way overboard. Very early on, you're going to start coming across things as you explore that you cannot proceed with. You'll find these metal-looking flowers that cannot be opened until much later in the game. You'll find these walls that look like they're growing, these like fire flowers that are growing on the sides of walls that you can't beat, you can't hit, you can't catch on fire, any of that stuff until much later. You'll also find underwater caverns that you can't breathe under, so you have to leave and come back later. And as I'll show you here in a little bit, you'll just organically find tall necks out in the wild that you can't climb because Aloy doesn't have the right equipment. And I'm sure there is more on the list. From a combat perspective, this is incredibly frustrating because if you spend time to scan enemy targets with the focus, more often than not, they'll be weak against something you don't even have yet. And these are enemies that are really just kind of in the starting area. I mean, the game does open up significantly through like the tutorial area, but just in that opening little area, it's like, wait, what am I supposed to do? And I really get the feeling with this game, it's meant to be played a very specific way, which for story-based games is perfectly fine. Guide me in very specific directions. God of War did this phenomenally. You're going to go in this direction, you're going to unlock something that's going to allow you to progress to the next area, so on and so forth. When you open up a world, though, and let anybody go in any direction they so choose, I'm not saying go to the very, the end of the game where like where the hardest enemies are. That's just silly. But I'm talking about just exploring organically in the starting area that they give you, or within main mission areas, things that you would naturally go say, hey, that looks interesting. I want to go see what this tower leads to, or a cave, what is inside the cave, or anything like that. And what ends up happening more often than not is you are slapped and you are not allowed to proceed. And I'm just so tired of games telling me how to play them, but touting something they are not. If they came to me and said, this is not an open world game, it's a very structured, level-based game, you're going to slowly fight enemies that get progressively harder, we're going to give you pieces of gear that progressively expand, so on and so forth, I would probably say, okay, I will accept that. But I'm finding a growing trend of games, and this is definitely the latest one, that really struggles in that regard. And I just can't wrap my head around it, and it really breaks the immersion. Yes, if you go off and explore, you should be rewarded, right? That's what I loved about Elden Ring. That's what I think everybody universally loved about Elden Ring. Anywhere you went, anything you did, 9 times out of 10, you were rewarded with something. Here, you may get a little piece of it, but you're going to have to come back later because you don't have the right piece of gear or the right piece of tech. Those things will come later on, and unfortunately, you're going to have to wait and either come back later, or more often than not, you're just going to say, it's not worth it, and move on. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that. It's like Metroidvania to the extreme. And I find that this is happening way too much. Doom Eternal, perfect example. Doom Eternal, a game I critically panned. I did not beat it. I did not like it. Take a fun, first-person, aggressive shooter and make that the original Doom. Everybody loved it. The 2016. I mean, even the original too, but the 2016 variant, right? Well, that's not enough. Now we're going to have to change how you get different types of health and armor and weapons. Those all require different abilities that are on different cooldowns. Why did we just make the game more complex than it needed to be? Wasn't it a first-person shooter? And in this regard, why did we make Horizon more complex than it needed to be? Isn't it a story within a story about a woman hunting dinosaurs, trying to, essentially save the universe from this big bad event by, going off and exploring and getting stronger and all that stuff? Yes, it should be. But it doesn't always turn out that way. And I find that incredibly frustrating. So a big portion of the game is just almost gated because you really have to just do main story beats for a while and then go back significantly. And oh, by the way, when you go back, you probably still haven't unlocked everything in the previous area. And you're going to have to go basically 2 steps forward and 3 or 4 steps back in order to feel like you're being a completionist. And I don't necessarily mean I have to see every single thing at once. What I mean is it's not even worth trying at this point because I'm constantly gated by stuff. So that's a big part of the game, that exploration, that you go see that, they always make fun of Todd Howard with that. You see that mountain out there, you go climb it. Or in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, just how you could freely explore your toolkit is pretty much given to you at the beginning. Here, it's drip-fed, and I think it's done very, very poorly. And I think that's a big point of why I don't like about this game. But this isn't the only thing. There's another thing that's really ticking me off. And it's the way the progression is actually advanced in terms of your character. There are a lot of things to do in this world in terms of quests. And some of them are interesting, and some of them not so much. Now, thankfully, if you wanted to, you could pretty much skip all of the optional dialogue and go directly to what the main quest is. And there'll be an indicator on the dialogue option that basically says, hey, if you want to complete the quest or you want to just get going, this is the option to pick. The problem is the game doesn't really give you enough to really make you feel like you're making an impact on the world. And if this is a game where you're supposed to go around and help people and learn about the world around you and learn about these characters and learn about the story, and I mean, some of them are throwaways, don't get me wrong. But if you want me to be invested in the character, let's not be verbose for the sake of being verbose. Unfortunately, the characters in this game talk way too much. They will just yammer on and on and on and on excessively. There may be 5 or 6 options on a dialogue wheel, and some of them update as you ask more questions. You could do follow-on questions. And I'm kidding you not, there are some places in this game where you are basically listening to dialogue from anywhere to 10 to 15 minutes straight. It's way too much exposition, way too much slog. You could skip it all, but good luck understanding how some quests feed into each other. And by the way, a lot of the side quests actually impact the main quests. Aloy will say or do things that will be different. Different quest discussions will emerge by completing side quests. And if you want to advance, the best way to do it is by side quest. That's where your levels are locked behind, essentially. You're always going to be guaranteed some skill points for completing side quests. You could ignore all of them and do the golden path. But in that situation, unfortunately, in the golden path, you're not going to get a lot of skill points to fill out the mass amount of skill trees. And that is another thing that really frustrates me, is the game is essentially gearing you to do filler content. But when you take it in, consideration of my first point, where a lot of the filler content can't be completed, well, then you start to see what I'm talking about, where it's like, oh boy, here we go again, another area I can't do, or a quest I need to get to, and I'm zigzagging out of enemies because I'm not ready. The third point is the combat that occurs in between all of the other things that I said. This game really loves itself. There are a litany of weapons and different types of like fire arrows and ice arrows and shock arrows and acid arrows. And there's more I haven't even uncovered yet. And you're going to have to use all of them if you want to be successful. Enemies have specific weak spots, so you're going to have to scan the enemies. You're going to have to know where they are. And thankfully, you can pause the game and go to a really nice character sheet of each enemy. But does that sound like a lot of fun to you? I'm like, oh wait, what enemy am I fighting again? Okay, let me scan through his body and see what he's weak to, and then go and make sure I highlighted that piece so I could shoot the right arrow at that. But a lot of the enemies aren't just in a pack by themselves. They're all mixed up, which makes sense. That's what makes combat more fun, right? When you have a little bit of this type of enemy and that type of enemy, they all have different abilities. They all have different weaknesses. So not only are you going to have to get the right type of arrow for one enemy, but you're going to basically have to ignore all the other ones to focus on the first one, because a lot of the weapons you get early on aren't going to be strong enough or the right type to have your weapon wheel fully populated across with all of the different types of pieces of gear you need to be successful. It's overly cumbersome. You're going to be constantly switching through traps and bombs and healing potions and different types of arrows. And thankfully, with the Valor system, you're going to get a jolt of offense every so often that will definitely kind of turn the tide of war. But in between those moments, and let's be honest, the Valor system is nice, but it should be considered an ultimate, not a requirement. Unfortunately, the way the Valor system works is you have to kind of build up to use it, and it only lasts a short amount of time. And even then, it's not always enough to turn the tide of war. So you're going to constantly be juggling through different types of arrows and bows and everything. And again, it's like this game is just overly complex and dense, and it kind of crashes under its own weight. And that's what I am not enjoying about this game at all. Those are three things that are absolute pillars of a good game. Progression in the sense of exploration, questing in the sense of character building, and combat in the sense of achieving something when you set out to defeat larger-than-life opponents. And this game suffers on those three pillars. Despite that, it's still somewhat fun to play because it's just so darn pretty, and it is responsive, and it is smooth. But when you're fighting enemies and you're slogging through quests and you're trying to explore to find better pieces of gear, you can't help but feel stuck. Which brings me back to the title of this video and my original point. I'm sick and tired of open world games telling me how to play them. I'm tired of it. If you're going to open up this universe for us, then open up this universe for us. Whoever designed this game really thought through a lot of things, because there is so many layers of foraging and questing and exploring and skill treeing and finding checkpoints and working through side quests and major quests and unlocking pathways and uncovering the mystery of Aloy's character and what happened before and this world event she's trying to stop. Lots of layers here, very complex. But unfortunately, I think it just falls under its own weight more often than not. And I gotta question if I want to even keep playing it, because I've invested time in this game and I'm just not feeling that connected to this character. And that's really a shame, because I love the first one and I'm a big fan of Aloy, and in a ways I feel like she is the PlayStation mascot. She was phenomenal, and the first game was so revolutionary, and how you played and breaking down enemies and stealing parts and crafting new pieces of gear and exploring a vibrant world and getting this rich story that was dense in both, you know, the current day and the people before, you know, modern society. That was a lot of fun, and I feel like they just lost it here. I'm reading the reviews, and I feel like I'm kind of alone in this, but I wanted to put this video out here because I wanted to say, look, if you're watching this video and you like the game and you're just sitting here and you've already written me like 90 nasty comments in this video, that's fine. But I really challenge everybody to sit and honestly think, in an open world game, don't you feel like there should be a balance from personal progression versus what the game is actually forcing you to do? And to me, this game doesn't cut it. The entire time I've been talking, by the way, I want to point out, I'm still on the first leg of a side quest. That's how dense some of these things are. Now, I did take a brief detour to go check out that tall neck, which, again, my PP was slapped. I was sent away because I am not able to successfully climb up it at this moment, whatever that means. So I'm going to be heading back to the original quest giver. There, she's going to tell me I have to do exactly what I just did 2 more times. And that's when I decided I had enough. Hope you guys found this video interesting and informative. Maybe makes you think about Horizon in a different light. I can honestly tell you, for me, it's just not a lot of fun. I think it's going to go back on the shelf, and maybe I'll pull it out later, but maybe I won't. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.